So it's always a little weird when I do that and then I come back. But I'm back. Hey, so it's good to have you guys here this morning. And actually, I was going to share what I'm about to share last weekend and not tie those two things together. But I'll talk about this in a minute, a little bit of a weird road I took. So I'm doing all this today. So to continue on with that whole year in recap, I want to talk about our church a little bit. I want to talk about your church that I love so much and some of you love. And you need to know if you're here and you're visiting because of holiday weekends or you came for the first time, I want to pull back the curtain and I just want to talk about why we do what we do and actually tell you about the agenda that we have as a church, because we have an agenda. Many of us would say that have been around the church for a while, we would say that following Jesus made our lives better and made us better at life. We've talked about this for years. And I always say this, not easier, because if you were around for the last series, under the circumstances, sometimes following Jesus doesn't make it any easier at all, but it makes it better because we believe that Jesus, who created all this, he's the one that has the prescription for how to be a great dad or a great husband, a great wife, a good friend. We believe that when we follow the King in his ways and what he taught, we end up going in the best direction with our lives that we can. And many of us in this room and online would even say it's where we found real life. Now, you need to know this, that in January, it'll be our 19th birthday as a church. We'll be around for 19 years next month, which is shocking to me. But for 19 years, we have been what's called an outward-facing church, where we have decided to care about the people outside our walls as much as we care about the ones inside our walls. And it's driven by the fact that we think that's how Jesus lived his life. 19 years ago, we dreamt about creating a church unchurched people would love to attend. And if you're an unchurched person showing up to our church today, we just want you to know, we hope you love attending here today. And we've been doing this all along the way because we think this is what God called us to do. Now, when I use like New Testament Bible language, when we talk about this, it's easy to talk about people on the outside of the church and on the inside. And that doesn't mean people on the outside are any worse or better than people on the inside or vice versa. It just means people that kind of are out there that don't believe or aren't part yet, and the people in here that already are. And here's the challenge when it comes to insiders in church. The gravitational pull of the local church is towards insiders. It's towards the people that are already here. This, my friends, if you ever ask me what concerns me most about our church and the future, it's not all the things that worry us, like paying the bills and the parking lot and it's what happens if we ever decide to think more about the people in here and that are already here than the people that aren't here yet. And here's the thing with insiders. You may think insiders are people that got it all buttoned up, got it all together. They're perfect in every way, and the outsiders are the messy ones. Here's what we've discovered. Everybody's a mess. Everybody's messy. And if you're not in a mess, you'll be in a mess some point in your life. We're always all in a mess. But we wanted to create a church 19 years ago for a church that unchurched people love to attend. And some of you, this is your story. If I would give you the mic right now, you'd get up and say, yeah, that was me. I wandered in here 2 years ago or 10 years ago, and I was a long way from God, and this church loved me, and it cared about me, and I had this aha moment where I realized that Jesus could be my Savior, and then I surrendered to him, and that's my story. And you're so grateful. You got a friend that happened to. You might have a family member right now that you're praying for because they're kind of feeling a little, well, if you would be honest, lost, and you hope they are found, and you're hoping somehow they'll encounter a God that loves him. And as a part of our church, you hope that we resist just being for the people that are already here on behalf of your friend or who you used to be. Now, here's what you need to know. When you create a church like we've created, you find criticism along with it. Can you believe that? And in the early days, the criticism was kind of silly, and it doesn't hardly exist in this sense. We got criticized because I wore jeans on stage. Now, if I wore slacks, you would all freak out. I mean, you wouldn't even know what to think around this place, right? We were criticized because we met in a facility that didn't look like a church. It's a good thing we upgraded to a grocery store. This is much better along the way. We are criticized for irreverent music, and our music still can be a little irreverent. If you ever wonder why we do like secular openers, because I have friends that I invite to come. They may be here today, and they may not understand a lot of what we do, but they go, oh, I get that. I can hang here with these people. They're not so weird. We were criticized all along the way because some of the messy people, some people in our community told me your name and said, do you believe he goes there? And my answer's always been the same. Yeah, and even you can go here if you want to. We'll take anybody along the way. But the criticisms that have been consistent, one of them is this. It's just so big, they must be doing something wrong. Like somehow drawing a crowd and having a lot of people show up is like against what Jesus would want. But when you read the Gospels, especially in Mark, almost every chapter talks about Jesus drawing a crowd, because when God shows up in a body, people are drawn to God. In fact, Jesus at the end of his life said, I want you to multiply this thing over and over and multiply and grow. Another criticism we've heard along the way, and maybe you've heard this, maybe you said this, is LifeHouse, they're just not that deep. They're just not deep. Their teaching's not that deep. And when people say that to me, I'm like, hey, could you define deep? Because when I think of deep, I think of a pool, like the shallow end and the deep end. At least when you're a kid, the deep end means you can't touch bottom. Is that the goal for church? Do we want to have people so confused that they go, well, this is deep. I know it's deep, but do you understand what you just were taught? Well, I don't understand it, but it's deep. Is that the goal? And that's what some people think is deep. Here's what you need to know. We actually think when people can understand and apply it to their lives, that's deep. It's kind of like when Jesus said, the wise man builds his house upon the rock and it stands. Yeah, when you do what Jesus says, it's deep. The old analogy we've used for years is it's like the cans of paint in your basement that you never put on the walls. They're literally worthless because they're still in the can. You can have it, you can know about it, but until you use it and apply the paint, it's wasted. And we think love expressed through sacrifice is what creates, well, deep Christians. Like Paul and Peter and John said, listen, there's hope and there's faith, but when love and truth and grace are applied, it's the deepest thing of all. And some of you, I'm just telling you, you're the people that amaze me because I've watched your deep, deep faith, your patience with other people. I've watched it. I've watched you sit in circles with people that are broken and they're messy and they're a little annoying, and you've loved them and they have loved you. I've watched parents in our church, adults, foster kids that were not theirs, that came from horrible backgrounds, and they just thought, someone's got to do something about that. And I'm going to love like Jesus. I'm going to adopt some kids. I'm going to foster some kids. I'm going to care for some kids. I've watched some of you in your deep faith come alongside someone in the middle of their grief because they lost somebody they loved. And this is so much more than going to a visitation or a funeral, although we love those. Those are important, so do that. This is going, I'm going to walk with you in your grief. That's why some of you have been for the students in our communities. We've launched into that. And here's the beautiful part. When it comes to being a deep Christian, you wade into situations that are like terrifying, hoping God comes through. In fact, here's what you might define a deep Christian as this morning. The ones who wade out into the deep water of sacrificial application, where they won't survive without God's help. I'm going to the place that I'm not prepared for, but I'm trusting God's going to join me there, and I'm going to help, and I'm going to love, and I'm going to serve, and I'm going to give my life. LifeHouse is not deep. Yeah, but it's compelling, and it's convicting, and it's clear because Jesus was compelling, convicting, and he was clear. And as a church, you guys have just not opted for a bunch of words. You've opted to say, God, let your spirit lead me into the deep places that I'm going to go, God, you got to help me to help whoever you put me in their life with. That's why some of you sit in circles with messy kids and messy students. Now, you don't have answers to all their questions, but you sit with them and you tell them about God's love for them and you pray for them and you come alongside them because you've decided to be a deep Christian. You've decided to do something that stretches you. Hey, man, I want to be a deep Christian. You know an easy answer to this? This will throw you off real quick. Give double next year what you gave this year. Woo, I want to go back to the shallow end real quick. That's what a lot of our response is. But see, it's when we open up our hands. I want to serve more than I've ever served. I want to be sacrificial because that's unusual in our world. You know what's usual is to make it all about me. Another way to think about this is do something that stretches your faith. This is where you apply the things of Jesus. We read those amazing stories where Jesus said to Peter, come out of the boat, and Peter walked on water. I'm not sure you're going to walk on water, but you may come alongside somebody. You have to trust Jesus just as much to love them where they're at. You know what's not deep? This isn't deep. These are Greek letters. This is not even the Greek language. This is fake Greek, because I took my computer keyboard and I just switched it over to Greek letters, and this is not even proper, but this isn't deep when the words are just literally translated. But sometimes as Christians, we think, oh, that's deep. If you show me Greek, you show me some hidden meaning. Yeah, but what are you going to do with it? Nothing, but it's deep. Deep is not saying I have all these gifts of the Spirit. Deep is when I take the gifts that God's given me and I go into the deep water and use them. That's why some of your stories, like when you get baptized, I hear some of your stories of how you responded to God, whether it's a baptism, you're sharing with a friend, or you just tell me, and I go, okay, you're wading into the deep waters. I feel like I'm still in the shallow waters compared to some of the people that attend our church. And here's the thing. We want our church, we want your church, if this is your church, to be deep and really wide. We want it to be deep around the teachings and the resurrection of Jesus. We want everything we read in Scripture to go through the filter of the teachings and the resurrection of Jesus and never compromise on the deep teachings of Jesus. But we want it to be wide. You know what wide is? Everybody's welcome. The doors are wide open. The whole thing we're about to say at Christmas time, that it's good news of great joy for all people. We really believe it's all people, not just religious people, not just people that know how to talk and where to sit and how to pray. It's all people are invited into God's kingdom. Literally, at the end of Jesus' life, after he rose from the dead, he told his guys and the gals in the audience, he said, therefore, I need you guys to go and make disciples of, I love this, all nations. Oh, you mean the religious people in all nations? No, all nations in every corner, the messy ones, the sinful ones, the pagans, the ones that are far from God. And I want you to baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Every mess, every sin, I want you to tell them there's good news in this world. And that's what you all have done as a church for almost 19 years, that we would be a deep church and a wide church. And I hope we keep doing this. We want to be a church that's deep and wide. And the truth is, some of you will pat me on the back and say, hey, thanks for not listening to the critics in the early years. Listen, I could care less about the critics anymore. I'm just too old and too tired to care about people that criticize us as a church. And you can quote me on that. You know what concerns me? It's that the gravitational pull of every church, even possibly ours, is towards the people that are already here. Let me give you a picture of what this looks like. And if you hear this today, I want you to stomp it out. What about my chair? What about my seat? What about the wild Indians on the other side of this building? And if I offend you by saying Indians, I don't know why, but just so you know, there's something going on. Hey, what about this? The kids in this church are irreverent and don't be good for them. They're having the time of their lives over there. Isn't that great? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, what about my parking spot, and my chair, and my music? And what about I want? Is Matt going to say something I want? Come on, we're better than that. And you're better than that. You've been better than that for a lot of years. And if you hear that today, I just want you to say, no, hey, don't do that. Be better than that. Be like Jesus along the way. Hey, you know another cool thing I've not talked much about when it comes to our churches? We're actually part of a network of churches across the United States that would consider themselves an outward-facing church. It's called the Irresistible Church Network, or short for ICN. I don't talk much about this, and I should, because it's powerful. There are 97 churches across the United States that have decided to do church similar to what we do. They're looking for people that are on the outside to come in and be part of this. And I actually, in the last year and a half, have gotten to be part of a team that's starting a church planning part of this ICN network, where we take, people that want to start churches all over the country and help them do that and coach them. So there's more churches that are reaching more people. It's really cool. Just so you're clear on this is not a denomination. This is just a partnership of churches that are working together. Sometimes you'll see some of the other communicators on our screens that are part of some of those churches along the way. But not only is that in the United States, there's the same kind of networks in the United Kingdom, Latin America, Australia, and South Africa. There's about 116 churches around the world that are kind of following the model that you've been doing for almost 20 years, using your playbook. They do Be Rich and For the Students, and they have all this passion to reach people. I wish I could talk about this a little bit more. Last month I was in Dallas with all these different guys, and I got to spend half the day with the United Kingdom guys. Dude, they're crazy. I mean, I'm just telling you, they're nuts. But their passion for the local church and their passion for Jesus is overwhelming. Here's what's cool about it. In Europe, the church has almost gone away because years ago it decided to be all insider focused. And it almost completely went away. And there's a group of churches that are doing what we all do here, that are revitalizing the church through God's strength and His power and His Spirit, and a really, really good strategy. Now, for us and these other churches that we partner with, and lots of other churches around the world, we're not the only ones doing this right by any means. For us, though, one of the places that we've taken on our marching orders is something that I discovered as an adult. I didn't ever know about this growing up in church. I didn't know about this as a young Christian. I didn't even learn about what I'm about to tell you in seminary. But after the resurrection of Jesus, there's a bunch of Jewish people that became Christians. We all know that. And the word spread all over the Roman Empire, and a bunch of Gentiles, non-Jewish people, became Christians. And what happened is the Jewish Christians, who had to grow up with all these rituals and rules and traditions and the Torah, and one other thing I'll talk about in a second, they looked at these Gentile Christians that they just had to trust in Jesus and went, that's not fair. These Gentiles need to do all that we do to become a Christian. And the question became, do they, the Gentiles, have to be Jewish in order to be Christian? Everything the Torah says, all the rituals, and here was the catch, and be circumcised. Think about that. All the 30-year-old women like, yeah, circumcise those guys. And all the 30-year-old men like, no, I'm not doing that. Think about what's at stake. You got to circumcise all the adult men for them to become Christians. And so they had this big church meeting. Church meetings are terrible. We've never had one at LifeHouse to argue something out. Hopefully never will, but they had one. And there's all these religious Jewish people there, and there was Peter, and there was Paul, and they were talking about what God has done in our world. And finally, James stands up. James, the brother of Jesus, grew up with Jesus, saw him rise from the dead. He said, I'm going to clear this up once and for all. He said, it is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. You just need to know this is on my mind and our staff's mind and our key leaders' mind all the time. What James is saying is we're going to remove all the obstacles for people to meet Jesus, because Jesus is enough obstacle as it is. Because, in order to be a follower of Jesus, at some point you have to say, He's the Son of God. He's my King. He's the one I'm going to surrender my life to. All the other stuff, it doesn't matter. Move the crap out of the way, James is saying, because we want people to focus on Jesus and then to stumble over Him. James did that for you and I. Someday in heaven, when you run into James, I hope you thank James. And if you're a dude in our church, I hope you really thank James. That's a really worthy acknowledgement. After this happened, the church just exploded around the world. And we have just lived in this space. We're going to do everything we can as a church to remove the obstacles of the good news of great joy for all people. And here's what you need to know. Everybody means everybody to us. Everybody's welcomed in the kingdom of God. And so to wrap this up really quick, I want to talk to you about what we call the irresistible list, the irresist list. These are 3 questions that we ask all the time when it comes to, is our church removing the obstacles? And I've talked about this with our staff, key volunteers, but I've never really talked about it from stage, or at least not in a long time. And I want you to know this is something we ask ourselves all the time. Here's the irresist list. What do people see when it comes to LifeHouse Church? What do people hear? And what do people experience around us? So let's start with the idea of, what do people see? And this is not just when they come into the building. What do they see? And this makes us all a little bit nervous, or it should. What do they see in you outside the building? What do they see and experience in me? So let's start off with being really practical. When it comes to them coming into our building, do our facilities, you're in the facility right now, look like we're expecting guests and their children? So the first question we ask is this place clean? Let me ask you a question. When is your house cleanest? Not when your idiot brother comes over to drink beer in the garage. Let's just be honest, wives all know that. It's when you have guests over. You clean as much as you can. Well, when our building is clean, it's because we're expecting guests. So who picks up trash around here? Our custodial staff? Our staff? You know who picks up trash at LifeHouse, or who should? All of us, if this is your church. I was in the men's restroom a couple months ago, and I went to the wash my hands, and another guy that goes to our church, he's here every Sunday, he's got paper towels in his hands. He's not volunteering this Sunday, and he's wiping the counters of all the counters and sinks. I'm like, dude, thank you so much. Why are you even doing this? Because it's such an odd behavior to see from a man anywhere. And you know what he said to me? Because people are showing up today. And I want them to have a good experience and know that we were expecting them. Everybody that calls LifeHouse their home is trash pickers up, you know? It's why in our lobbies we don't have weird, old, strange church bulletin boards or weird signs or sayings that people don't understand. It's why we welcome families with everything we have. It's why this morning you were sitting in brand new chairs. Anybody notice the brand new chairs in the building? Yeah. Now, let me tell you why we have brand new chairs. Not just so we're comfortable, because people were falling through the bottom of our 25-year-old chairs we had. You know, that's not a good guest experience. And we want to make this a place where people have a good experience. Here's another thing when we think about what people see. Do people see themselves? Do guests see themselves? This is huge, because guests need to see themselves. So young people need to see themselves. So young people, just get there. I need you to keep volunteering. Part of our church. Young people walk in the door. Hope my mic's not cutting out on me. When young people walk through the door, I want them to see other young people, older people that you've decided, I'm old and I'm checking out. Don't check out. Come on. Older people, when they walk through our doors, need to see themselves in you. It's not time to check out, it's time to engage. That's why every race, nationality, everybody we have in our church needs to volunteer, because when someone that is more like you walks through the doors, I want them to see themselves in our church. I want them to be checked into the Life Kids. I want their kids to be loved and welcomed and to feel that in this place. It's why we ask the question, what do people hear when it comes to our church? Here's a question I hope we never quit asking. Do we have a good reputation in the community that we live in? This is so huge. And a lot of us think, well, this is about what we do, organizationally in our community. Let's just start with you and me. And I want to pick on you for a second. Just imagine this. You're at a restaurant, or maybe even worse, you're at a ball game and you lose your cool. You're in the driveway to a parking lot and you lose your cool, and let's just be honest, you act like a jerk, or I act like a jerk. And then somebody sees your LifeHouse logo on your bumper or on your shirt, or they see on Facebook that you go to LifeHouse and you've been a jerk on Facebook. You know what that does? It kills opportunities to invite people. And I have to be so careful, because I can be a jerk really easily. You got neighbors? How you treat your neighbors represents how people see and hear us in our community. You know where we didn't do as well as we could have in this area? It was during COVID. Because we had kids that didn't get to play basketball games. We had parents yelling at school officials and at the health department, and then saying, yeah, I'm going to church on Sunday. We just can't afford to act like that in our community and then say, hey, we're Christians. And part of that's just for our church, but part of that's, come on, because we're Christians. And Christians don't act that way. So the next question we ask is, how do we engage the community? Here's what I want for our church to continue, and it already has because you guys are amazing. We want people to know we're here, be happy we're here, and be better off because we're here. I want people to say, I'm so glad that LifeHouse is in our town. I don't believe what they believe, but I'm glad they're here. They care about people. This is huge. It means our reputation follows us wherever we go. No angry, jerkish Christians in our world. And no one feels this more than me, because if I lose my cool in traffic or being on a stoplight, people will literally come to me and say, hey, I was going to invite my friend, then I told him you're the pastor, and now they won't come because of you in the Burger King parking lot. And I shouldn't be at Burger King, first of all. And second of all, I shouldn't be a jerk. Those both run together. And we never want to ruin an invite. It is literally why we do Be Rich. It's why we do community groups that serve in our community, just to show love to our community. It's why for the students, this is kind of fun. You don't know this. We asked you to raise a ton of money. And when the deadline came for the students, where we clothed all the students and then we put money in the student need fund, I told you that we raised, or you all raised, $97,000. And a few people came up to us and said, oh, we missed the deadline. We forgot all about this. And money kept pouring in. And so y'all didn't raise $97,487. You raised $100,487. Isn't that cool? Now, I wasn't going to tell you that because I was saving $100,000 for next year, because I wonder where this is going to end up. Here's what we know. Generosity produces more generosity. And if you ask me, Matt, why do you do it for the students? There's just two simple reasons, and I want you to hear this clearly from me. One is because we're trying to love students in our community that have needs. But the ultimate reason, I hear this clearly, is because it opens the doorway to tell students and families about Jesus. And love and goodwill makes people go, okay, I'm at least willing to listen. When it comes to being in the building or online, what do people hear? I ask this question all the time. Is our communication clear and engaging? I ask people to rate and critique what I'm saying so it's as clear as it can be. I ask that of every communicator, whether it's for students, whether it's for little kids around our building, small group leaders. We ask them to work on this because we want it to be clear. We ask the question, is our content helpful? Listen, we believe our content's true. The question is it helpful? Are there handles? Can people come to our church and go, you know what, okay, I'm not sure I believe that yet, but I think that would be helpful. Because we think what Jesus teaches is true and helpful. Our irresistible list, it's what do people see in you and me and when they come here? What do people hear in us outside the building and inside the building? And then what do people experience? And the question I want you to ask yourself as a follower of Jesus, if you are, if you're not, this is not a burden to you, but for us that follow Jesus it is, what is it like to experience you? What is it like to experience me? What's most important in this day and age is not just all the programming and we get this right and I walk out on stage at the right time. That's not the most important. It's still important. What's most important is what's the reputation we carry as followers of Jesus, not just what we believe. And I want our reputation, I want your reputation is they're kind, they're generous. I'm not sure I believe what they believe, but man, I hope my daughter marries one. I hope I get to hire a Christian. They believe in all kinds of goofy, crazy stuff. They believe in man rose from the dead, but I'd love to work for one someday. What do people experience when they experience you? Hey, and listen, if you're one of those people that kind of got it together, I can't afford for you to hide either. There's some people that are great in our churches. You're like the best people I've ever met, but you're hiding a little bit. You're not engaging. And the people in our world need to be engaged by you. I need you to step in. I need you to serve. I need you to participate because you're really good people. Don't hide. Do not check out. What's it like to experience you? What's it like to experience us when they walk through the doors of their church? Hey, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Keep loving each other really well. When you see something that bothers you, unless it's like mission critical, don't worry about that. Love each other really well. And when you see someone else, here's what I'd love for every person that calls LifeHouse their home to walk in here on Sunday mornings with this mentality. What can I do to help? Just predetermine, what can I do to help? Take my seat, because it's not my freaking seat anyway. Let me help you find where you need to go. Let's see how I can help you check your kids in. And you know this, you see somebody that comes into our church, and maybe this was you today, and they got that weird gaze, like, I am so lost in this wild place. You have my permission as of today, if this is your church, to walk up to them, whether you're volunteering this Sunday or not, and go, can I help you? You have my permission. What it does is it makes you and I believable and approachable, just like Jesus. The fundamental list, or the irresistible list, is what do people see in us? What do people hear? And what do they experience in this place and outside this place with you and I? This is mission critical, because we determine whether people are going to come back or not. God's not chasing people off. Jesus isn't chasing people off. And you don't chase people off, but we determine if they're going to come back, not just to our church, but to church somewhere, sometime. And every Sunday, and I hear this all the time from you all, somebody shows up with this mentality. One more shot. I'm going to give church one more shot. And maybe you're here with someone that's thinking about giving this one more shot. Here's what you're praying. God, let their kids enjoy Kids World. Let the music be good. Let Matt not say anything too stupid. Let it be clear. Let people love my friends or my family or my 19-year-old grandson, because you care like Jesus cares. So I want you to ask this question of you first and then of us. And you can hold me accountable to this. What do people see? What do people hear? And what do people experience? This is also, just so you know, the irresistible, healthy list. Because I don't know of any church that lives in this space that's had a church fight along the way. I just don't. We've never had a church fight. Because we've never said, let's argue over carpets and chairs and music and what I'm going to get, because we're not inward focused. You have family probably that's so inward focused, when they all get together, all they do is fight. This is how you assure for your kids and your grandkids, this is not that place. And just to be honest, and I don't have time to explain this is the only church I'm staying around for. I had a really weird incident about a week and a half ago, had a blood clot that was pretty serious. And the truth is, I'm a little out of gas right now. I'm running, I'm tired. I'm fine, I'm tired. And if I just had to get up here and do church management, I would have stayed home this morning. I'm only staying around for a church that wants to find people and reach people and love people and represent Jesus to our community well. And I hope that's the only church you'll tolerate too. And if anything sneaks up in you, other than that, I want you to just push that aside. Now, with all that said, the invitation to be part of a church like that, I want to read to you what the Apostle Paul wrote to wrap our time up, that nails us all to the ground, for me at least. The Apostle Paul, who wrote half the New Testament, said, though I am free and I belong to no one, I've made myself a slave to everyone. I'm giving up my rights for other people. Paul, why are you doing that? He answers the question. He says to everyone, to win as many as possible. Paul, tell me how you're going to do this. I got an answer. To the Jews. I became like a Jew to win the Jews. There's some buttoned up religious Jewish people at the temple. When I go to the temple, I get all buttoned up so they'll know Jesus. That's what I'm doing. I'm using my influence. He goes on to say, to those under the law, I became like one under the law. Though I myself am not under the law, I'll come back to that, so as to win those under the law to Jesus, to win them to Jesus, to bring them back to those, he would say, not having the law. I became like one not having the law, and I love this. Though I am not free from God's law, but I am under Christ's law, that just simply means that I'm going to love the way Christ loved. I'm going to love God and love my neighbor as Jesus loved his neighbor. So as to, say this word with me, will you? So as to those not having the law. to the weak, he says, to the weak. I became weak to win the weak. I become all things to all people so that, and the next phrase I hope is driven so deep into our hearts that we never forget it as a church. And if you're visiting today, I hope you know that this is our agenda. To all people so that by all possible means, by any means necessary, I'll do whatever it takes by all possible means, I might save some. Paul, why? I do all this for the sake of the gospel, the good news, that I might share in its blessings. For 18 years, my friends, for 18 years, we've tried to live this out. We haven't done it perfectly, but we believe there is good news of great joy for all people. And it's risky and it's messy and it calls us to be uncomfortable. But to be an outward-facing church is so powerful. And here's the promise, I think, when we decide to be on mission with Jesus in this. Goes back to what he said at the very end of his life. These are Jesus' words from Matthew. He said, surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. When you decide to be on mission with me and do and go where I've asked you to go and be the kind of people I've asked you to be, surely I am with you to the very end. If this is your church, this is where we're going. This is the only church I want to be a part of. And if this isn't your visiting, I'd love for you to join us. And maybe even if you're not sure you believe anything, I want you to know we don't want anything from you. We deeply want something for you. The center of that is the love of Jesus who gave everything for you. So let's be this kind of church. Let's never quit asking these important questions and reaching and loving people and loving each other. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I'm so grateful to talk about this, and not from a place of if we don't start doing this, we're in trouble, but from the place of let's just keep doing this the way we've been called to do this as a church. Thank you for every man, woman, student, and child that's experienced your love and your grace, that we've got to hear their stories and watch their faithfulness. Thank you for numbers that blow me away, but more importantly, thank you for stories of people that were lost, that are now found by you, Jesus, that we've gotten to be a part of that as a church. Never inward facing, but always outward facing and looking up to you as our Heavenly Father loves us so very much. In your name I pray, amen.